Why don't we do this? Why don't we begin by just sort of maybe steel manning the abortion position, the pro-choice position, because it's always important, isn't it, that we try to understand where our ideological opponents are coming from, to not dismiss people too quickly. You know, we might not be able to agree with someone's position, but we can sympathize, perhaps, to some degree, why they're at that position. You know, like people don't tend to hold to positions that they know are in direct defiance of the truth. So before we kind of get into why abortion's wrong, would this help?
Sure, let's
just
do
talk
it.
about like why do people think it's right? And by steel man, what I mean is, you know, there's the fallacy of straw manning where you misrepresent your opponent's position. And I know that the people online pro-choice folks tend to do that in a great deal, right? So, you know, like you hate women, you're against women. Like, yeah, that's my argument. I hate women, therefore I'm against
women.
abortion.
You know,
you hate
it just
women.
doesn't make sense.
So let's do that. Why are people for abortion? What are they saying, and how would you articulate it?
I think they would say it comes down to autonomy. We are a culture obsessed with autonomy, obsessed with choice and control. And so people in support of abortion would argue that it's about my bodily autonomy, my right to control my body. And therefore, if I want to have an abortion, which is something that involves my body being laid down on the abortionist table, then I should be allowed to access that.
And at the very least, it shouldn't concern you, right?
Right.
As a pro-life activist, you might disagree with my choice to do what I want with my body, but that's not, you have no right to speak to me.
Right. It's like, you know, you may not like if I do drugs, but I'm only impacting my body.
Life.
Now, of course, we could argue that the choice that you make to take drugs does have a ripple effect on other people in the community and so on and so forth. But they would look at it that way, that this is a choice I'm making for my life. Now, of course, we know where the pro-life response is going to go to that, but that's very much where the abortion supporter is focused.
Okay, and then see, this is the difficulty. I think with some issues, we could steel man their positions all day, because I'm very sympathetic to positions. I am somewhat sympathetic to positions that are against, say, my belief in certain things. But I'm so unsympathetic to the pro-abortion position that it's really difficult for me to spend much time propping up their argument, because I just feel like I disagree with it so strongly.
Well, I think yes, you do disagree with it, as I do so strongly, but it also comes down to the fact that it's still not a very strong argument, because we know that it is not just the woman's body that's involved when she has an abortion. You know, like increasingly I'm saying when I do debates and different lectures on the topic, I will say to the audience, when a woman takes a pregnancy test and she's not yet seen the results, but she doesn't want to be pregnant, if the test comes up negative, will she go to an abortion clinic?
No.
And they're always like, no, obviously not. And then I say, okay, but if the test comes up positive and she doesn't want to be pregnant, will she then consider going to the abortion clinic? They say yes. And I say, okay, well, what is it that the positive test is telling her versus what the negative test is telling her? The negative test is basically saying, it's just your body. Don't worry, it's just you. But the moment she has a positive pregnancy test, that's telling her it's no longer just her body. There's another body there. That's why she's thinking about going to the abortion clinic, an action she would never take if she had the negative test. So the very fact that she's now going to the abortion clinic is an admission there's another body present. So what about that body's bodily autonomy? What about that individual's choice? What about that? So then suddenly it becomes the choice I could make to lay my body down on the abortionist table is a choice that if I'm pregnant is going to impact another body. And if I believe in bodily rights, then I need to protect the bodily rights of that preborn human being.
Oh, you are so good at this. I remember.
Oh, thanks, Matt. If only everyone said that.
When I lived in Canada, you were there and you invited me to a debate you were doing on campus.
Oh.
And I think when people meet you, like you're so beautifully free and like joking around. And so that's how I knew you. And I'm like, can I come to this debate? I forget what university. It was in Ottawa.
Oh, okay.
And you're like, yeah. And you said something like, do you want to come and see how terrible the pro-choice arguments are? And you just ripped them and to shreds. I mean, you just decimated. And I remember that, I think they were bragging about how this guy was on the debate team and he was like #1 and he had gone to Harvard or something. But I thought, you might be good at debating, but if you're trying to defend a position that's not true, then
exactly. At
and
the
you
end of the day,
just
it's going to
decimated
fall
them.
flat.
I love how you put that about the body bit. Like, so if a woman takes a pregnancy test and she's not pregnant, as you say, her body was telling her something. There was a reason she went out.
Right.
I mean, unless she just had sex and was wondering, but
Right.
often she might experience something different going on within her body, and she gets the pregnancy test.
Right, but her body's reacting to another body. Like, so all of the physiological reactions a woman has when she's pregnant is because of the presence of another body. And so therefore, if there's another body, then how do we treat that other body? How ought we treat that other body? And that's actually an important distinction. It's not what can I do? The question is, what should I do? Can I have an abortion? Yes, I can do almost anything.
Yes.
The question is, should I do that in a civil society, in a society that believes all humans are equal, in a society that believes in the fundamental human right to life? Should I take this course of action?
Okay, so the thing that's brought up immediately, as soon as you start making sense, right, what's brought up is rape and incest, right? Like someone might say, and I'm not asking you this, but someone might say, like, have you been raped? Do you have any idea the kind of trauma a woman goes through? Do you see how unloving and unsympathetic your syllogisms are to my pain? You don't, and you have no idea. And so you really can't speak to this issue. If I'm raped and you're forcing me, that's the language, to give birth to this child, that's immoral. And then incest is also brought up as well. How do we respond to these?
So there's two approaches that we need to take. There's the approach of the heart and the approach of the head. And I think we need to start with the former. We need to acknowledge that anyone who's been victimized by sexual assault has been victimized, that they've been traumatized, that is a brutal assault for which there really aren't words to capture how vile it is. I have not been a victim of sexual assault, but I have many friends who are, or who have been, and I have seen the lifelong trauma that has brought to their lives. So while I can't say I've personally experienced it, I have observed through friendship the impact that has had on people who have personally experienced that. And I can acknowledge that is a terrible thing. And those people who have been hurt need our support, they need our love, our compassion, and counseling, and so on and so forth. The question we then need to ask, moving from the heart to the head, so there's this expression of sympathy, and then this introduction of logic, will abortion unrape a rape victim?
No.
Will it undo the trauma? Will it take away the evil that has happened?
No,
it
but
won't.
Someone would say, but it would make it less bad. If I'm raped, terrible, nothing can take that back. But if I'm raped and then forced to bring a child to term, and I'm living with a child who's a perpetual reminder to me of the rape that I've suffered, then they'd say, well, this is worse than being raped and then being able to abort the fetus.
Right. So then if they focus on this being worse because it's the reminder, then I ask, if a woman has an abortion, will she suddenly forget she's been raped?
She may not she may not ever forget it. She won't ever forget it.
Yes.
But this is a very visual and in your face reminder in a way that if she didn't have the child, it wouldn't be. Isn't that right?
So we acknowledge that there's some reminder, but we can't acknowledge that to the point that to think that if we took that particular reminder away, that we'd be eliminating all other reminders, that there wouldn't be things there. The next point I would make is that I would ask the question, is it fair to give the death penalty to the innocent child? That's a consequence we don't even give to the rapist. In America, in the states where the death penalty is legal.
Do you think we should? Do you think we should? I'm siding with, I think it's atrocious just how easy people who commit these heinous crimes get off.
I think we need more serious consequences for the aggressors.
Okay.
As someone who doesn't support the death penalty in general, because I think there are ways to prevent criminals from being a threat to society without having to end their lives in a form of societal self-defense, that they can, I think even in cases of murder, I actually wouldn't support the death penalty if we could protect society by incarcerating the person, for life or whatever the case may be. But my point would be, generally abortion supporters, I find, are not supporters of the death penalty. So these are individuals that wouldn't give the death penalty to a rapist. They wouldn't give the death penalty to a murderer. So then we ask, if you won't give the death penalty to guilty people, why would you ever consider giving the death penalty to an innocent person? That in the circumstance of rape, the guilty party is not the preborn child, the guilty party is not the woman, the guilty party is the rapist. So we're now talking with the act of abortion about giving a consequence, a punishment to the innocent party that we're not even giving to the guilty party. And even if we were giving that to the guilty party, I think we should all agree that no innocent person should ever pay the price of a crime that they themselves have not committed. So I would make the point that abortion is not going to unrape a rape victim. It is not going to take away the memories that she's been traumatized. And then most foundationally, we in a society that supports human rights may not give punishment for a crime that the individual being punished has actually not committed, that they're not guilty of. And so, you know, it's kind of like if a born child looks like their father and the father commits a crime in a small town and, you know, the child grows up and looks like the father. Well, the locals in the town who were traumatized by that father's crime may not justifiably attack this child of the criminal because he is a reminder of what his father did, because he looks like his father and people, you know, get memories of what evil had occurred previously, that we don't punish innocent people for the crimes of guilty people. Now, the abortion supporter will come back and say, well, a fetus isn't a person.
Yeah, I want to hone in on this, and because this is a question that's kind of come up a lot lately.
Right.
Okay, so, you know, if you say, I'm willing to grant that this is a human life because it has human parents.
Right.
But that's a far cry from saying it's a person. And so now we need to define terms. So
yes.
Yeah, I'd love you to spend some time on that.
Sure. So then I will ask the abortion supporter, what is a person? How do you define a person? And as you,
what are some answers you
so
get?
the typical answer you get is more along the lines of Peter Singer.
Yeah.
Peter Singer, who is a professor at Princeton University, kind of would argue that a person is someone who's rational, conscious, or self-aware. And so the abortion supporter will say, even if biologically you're human, the embryo, let's say in the first few weeks of pregnancy, even the fetus, you know, in the first trimester and so forth, they will say, well, that entity is not rational, conscious, or self-aware in that moment, and therefore, even if biologically human, is not a person. So I would then say, okay, well, if our definition of a person, and therefore what gives you the right to life and what stops me from being able to kill you, definition of a person is you're rational, conscious, or self-aware right now. What about when you're having surgery and you're under anesthetic? In that moment, you're not rational, conscious, or self-aware. If surgery is happening and I look at you and I say, can I kill you? You're not going to respond back and say, no, please don't, because you're under anesthetic. If you were sleeping and I whisper while you're sleeping, Matt, may I kill you? You're not going to say, no, please don't kill me, because you're not rational, conscious, and self-aware at that moment to the way you are right now. And we still acknowledge you're a person, because we would say by virtue of being human, you have the inherent capacity built into your human nature to be rational, conscious, or self-aware, but you can't currently express that due to your circumstances of sleeping or being under anesthetic. In the same way, by virtue of being human, the embryo or fetus of human parents has within his or her nature the capacity to be rational, conscious, or self-aware, but cannot currently express that because of her age. So when you're sleeping, you can't express it because of your circumstances, and that can change quickly. In the embryo's case, the embryo may not or cannot express it because of the embryo's age, which will change as the embryo gets older. But our right to life ought to be grounded in our existence, not in how old we are. And the embryo cannot act on certain abilities because of the embryo's age. And human rights aren't based on age, they're based on existence as a member of the human family.
Well put. I think someone might come back though and say, but isn't there something in the fact that an embryo has never been conscious, aware, or rational? So when I'm conscious, aware, and rational, I desire to live. When I sleep, I don't want to be dead, but when I'm asleep, I have dreams and aspirations. The embryo has never been these things.
Yes.
And so it would seem less evil, no?
Well, so
this
I
isn't
would
my
ask
opinion,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
This is what I think someone would say. It seems less evil to do that then.
So then I would ask the individual, why is that relevant? So the fact that you have experienced being rational, conscious, and self-aware right now, and then you might lose that ability to currently act on that if you're under anesthetic, if you're sleeping, and then you're going to come out of those situations and act again. The fact that you've previously had this experience, why does that matter in contrast to the embryo who has not yet had that experience?
Yeah,
why is that relevant? I would
question.
ask the abortion supporter to articulate why
I think
that matters.
I think for me, I would just say, yeah, I'm definitely in a trap, and I don't know how to respond in a way that would do justice to my pro-abortion position here. But I think it was something like, it may not say anything to whether or not I or you or someone in anesthesia has dignity, but it does seem like I have a desire to live, and it would seem wrong for you to deprive me of life because I have that desire. An embryo has never had it, and so to deprive them of life is, you're not kind of, they have no idea that it's happening.
So they do
Just
have
like
no
I have
idea.
no idea that it's happening under anesthesia. I
Correct.
Get that,
Or
but
let's go a little further ahead, but much further back from where you and I are. Let's take a late-term fetus, where most people, even who support abortion, would object to the abortion of that preborn child, 8 months pregnant. Most people are not going to support abortion that late in pregnancy. Or let's just take a newborn baby, whether it's the 8-month fetus or a newborn child. Those two individuals are not rational, conscious, and self-aware to the level that we are. And same thing, if I am cradling a newborn baby and I whisper in the child's ear, "May I kill you?" that baby has no ability to comprehend or respond.
You could, with the help of medicine, kill that child in a way that wouldn't be painful for that child, presumably.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. But
we could put the child under anesthetic and then end the child's life.
Right.
But it would still be
an
wrong.
atrocious thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there you go.
So I would say the point is that it is wrong to kill a human, not because the human feels pain at the time of killing, not because the human is aware at the time of killing, but because the individual being killed is a human. And so whether the preborn child feels pain or not, is aware or not, can respond or not, isn't relevant. What's relevant is this child a member of the human family? And that's why with abortion supporters, I like to use reference to the United Nations, which is often perceived as being a pro-abortion institution. But if you look at their foundational documents, they are profoundly pro-life. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights says all members of the human family have the right to life. And then they say in Article 6, everyone ought to be recognized everywhere as a person before the law. Well, who's everyone? Well, the preamble talks about all members of the human family. So since the preborn child is a member of the human family by virtue of having human parents, then Article 6 applies to them as much as it applies to you and me. That by being members of the human family, they ought to be recognized as persons everywhere before the law. Interestingly, the UN also has adopted a document called the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So this document goes through a whole bunch of stuff. It's very lengthy, but there's one part of the document that references countries in which the death penalty is legal. And they say in countries where the death penalty is legal, it may never be done on a pregnant woman.
Wow.
I know.
How long until that changes?
Oh, yeah, exactly. But to make that change would ruffle feathers, again, especially amongst people who don't support the death penalty, or even if they do, wouldn't support it being given to innocent people. If you could have two women in the same country who have committed crimes that, according to that country's law, are worthy of the death penalty. One woman is pregnant, one woman is not. Both of them are guilty. If only one of the two under that law is going to be killed because she's not pregnant, since both are guilty, that's an admission that within the body of the pregnant woman is an innocent party, and we don't kill innocent people for crimes that they haven't committed. So interestingly, not only is it the existence of a preborn child that saves some mothers from being killed by the death penalty, but the point is it's an acknowledgement that in her body is an innocent party, and so we don't kill innocent people for crimes they haven't committed.
Very well put.
Yo, thanks for watching. You can watch the entire episode on YouTube if you want. You can listen to it at The Matt Fradd Show by subscribing on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And feel free to support me, patreon.com/MattFradd.